north? Oh, not yours. Or would you still like to? Councillor Sayers.
We want to get that milled out.
A seconder, please. I'll second. Thanks, Ryan.
Co-seconder.
This is just a procedural item, essentially. So this relates to Plan Change 25 in Warkworth. So it was originally an area of 99 hectares of future urban zone land to be rezoned for residential, business and so on. Nearly all that rezoning was made operative in October 2021. So all we're talking about here now is that little red area to the north. So originally it was that area outlined in red. We're just talking about one site, which is a 4 hectare site in the north. And there was an appeal that went to the Environment Court on that. The landowner wanted to have a mixed use zoning. The council wanted it to be general business, and that was based on this area being identified as an employment area for Warkworth. And the court sided with the council and gave it a general business zoning. And there's been no appeal, so we're basically at the stage now where we can make that plan change operative.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions?
Look, if Councillor says you want to move it, yeah. I'm happy to second. I just really want to commend our planning teams and our legal teams for resolving this in the direction that was originally recommended. So thank you very much. Please pass that through to both legal and your planning peers.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? I'd like to move the item. I've moved it already. Take a vote. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Ryan. Item 12, David is here for the grants. Councillor Filipona, would you like to move? Councillor Foley, would you like to second? Thank you, Dave.
Kia ora koutou, ko David McIntosh tokuna, Senior Advisor for Events with Regional Services and Strategy.
Sorry, can you just move the mic a bit closer just for our people online?
Okay.
Thank you.
And I've got Angela Clark, who's Acting GM for Regional Services and Strategy. I'll just got a presentation to quickly go through on the grants round. So just overall, this grants round is a 600,000 a year. It's traditionally been pre-COVID. It was handled in two rounds a year. Was split 400,000 in the first and 200 in the second. That was to enable just different timings for events. It suited them better to have applications submitted at different times. Just go through our decision-making process. There's 4 stages to this. I guess the first element is that the application should meet the regional criteria as opposed to being primarily local. So that's largely in terms of the scale and numbers of people attending, and also the reach being across the region. Sometimes that might mean smaller events where it's a niche sort of activity, but does actually attract a regional audience. The second element of it is assessment against our the criteria from the events policy, and that's in the appendix to this report. It's got there's 9 components to that, and we assess each application and give it an overall score. Then once we've done that, we consider the fit for the application for our sort of portfolio, and we have some particular areas of focus, in particular responding to diversity in the community, in sort of multiple terms. Also, there's a little priority for Māori events and events for youth. The final stage of it is when we look at the sort of level of grant funding that we might apply to a particular application. And once we determine that it's one we think we should support. And that's largely depends on, I guess, relativity with existing events we fund. We try and keep them fairly well aligned in terms of the level. Plus, also, we're limited in terms of our budget capacity to increase amounts or take further grants on. One of the issues that we've got is the amount we allocate versus the amount that applicants request. Generally, we find that even with grant applicants that are coming in for subsequent occasions, they will be asking for more in the hope that we'll find something for them. We do provide a limited sort of amount of funding to the events we support. On average, it's only 13% of their overall event costs. That's for the round we're looking at this time. Our aim is to provide some continuity in funding to the events that helps them with certainty of their planning annually, rather than making wholesale changes to who we're supporting each year. That does have the issue that it reduces our capacity to increase or support additional events. Those requests for increased funding can come from multiple reasons, primarily increased costs. There's always a desire for event organisers to grow their events, and sometimes it's loss of other funding from grants or sponsorship. The fundamental problem, though, for us is that if we increase the funding to someone, potentially that would imply cutting someone else's funding that we've previously supported. In this round, we're recommending grants to 21 applications. 18 of them are ones we've funded previously. The three new ones are EcoFest, which is, I think it's the second year of their sort of bringing the different eco events together across the region. So we consider that to be useful to support, because there are those costs that come from trying to coordinate those activities, which are harder to get funding from other sources sometimes. Also, I think we recognise that these festival type events across the region actually have some significant benefits because of the bringing together a large number of smaller events under an umbrella. That's where we get that bring in that sort of real community support for the events, because they're smaller individually, but at the same time the festival of multiple events has that real impact and draws the audiences. We have the same sort of situation with our Culture Fest, the Auckland Council event, and World of Cultures, and the Heritage Festival is another example of that, where we put in a modest amount of money and get quite a bit of return on community activity. The second one is Kaumana Harvest Festival. That's a smaller event which is focused on sustainable food systems. It's quite unique in the region, and they're just looking to restart their event this year after being sort of out of action since 2019 due to COVID. So it's it's a unique sort of event, and it's a modest amount of money there. The third one is Manu Moana, which is Songs of the Pacific. That's a delivered by the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, and it's being performed in Wellington. It's a concert, and it's there's a number of requests that came from the Pacifica communities to have that come to Auckland. They're really focused on trying to keep down the price of tickets. They're also prioritising the release of tickets to the Pacifica community groups in the first instance. That's a one-off, so it's actually it works quite well. We have a portion of the fund that we generally look for one-off events to fund so that we can rotate a bit annually. So there's a couple of, all those, majority of those were funded at the level that they've received previously. The one exception is ASB Polyfest, where they received $100,000 last year. That was an increase from the $75,000 the two preceding years due to the conflict with Te Matatini and the need to hold the Māori stage on a different dates to the other stages. So that increased their costs substantially, so we provide an additional amount. So we're sort of reverting back to their previous level. Just a note on the Farmers Santa Parade, their funding they received through the grants, around a $17,000 grant, which is the same as their grant last year. There's also a dedicated budget line for them that is inflation adjusted each year, and that's at $49,000. That's non-contestable. So they've got about the total of those two numbers is their funding that they'll get this year. In terms of the events that we've recommended to be declined, that's 17 of the 38 applications. I've just summarised the key reasons, and generally it's because of their scale, smaller scale events. I'm going to do a bit of work to try and engage with applicants earlier to discuss their event and ensure that it's going into the right scheme, really. There are a few other types of situations, some where they are more aligned with, say, arts and culture funding, and better to stay in that funding area, and others are sort of out of scope for our regional scheme. So I think that's the main points there, and just happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. We've got two questions for you, one from Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I've just got a question about the NZSO funding, because it's quite significant. It's one of the highest funded in this round. Mm-hmm. They are a direct competitor to our Auckland Philharmonic Orchestra. They are funded by central government, unlike us. And I'm just interested why we are putting our money towards the NZSO when our APO does a lot of work in this space and for our Pacifica community. And we haven't potentially gone to some of our partners who support NZSO, for example, Go Media, the Herald, Listener and whatever, to get that sponsorship first. It just irks me that we struggle to fund our own orchestra, and here are we putting up $25,000 to our Wellington-based National Orchestra, whose mandate it is to tour New Zealand anyway, not funded by us, but funded by central government. So why are we doing that?
It's, I guess, primarily the content and a sort of to support keeping the ticket prices down, making it more accessible to the Pacifica communities.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you haven't grabbed me around the fact that our APO won't provide that service, or we could get it sponsored in a different way. It's just, do you know what I mean? We have enough trouble funding our own, and it's $25,000. If you look at the list of money going for others, it's one of the highest. I mean, I think, look, you're talking to me here. Orchestras, love them, you know, and opportunities for people to listen and be part of that experience, fantastic. But we're giving it to a competitor here, and if APO didn't do anything for Pacifica in music, fine, but they do, quite considerably. So I'm just struggling with that one. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Good point, councillor. You don't have to answer that. You can take the feedback away. Member Henry.
You're right. Can I just ask, how many of the applications were made by Māori? And out of those, how many were funded? What's the sort of percentage?
I think there's only the 2 events with the core Māori focus in this round. I don't think any of the declined ones were from Māori or had that real focus. So that's...
So there were no Māori declined?
no, I don't believe...
Sorry?
no, I don't believe so.
So they were all funded?
I think the ones that have got a Māori focus were funded in this round.
So how many was that?
It's 2
Out of
out of the
18, something like that?
yeah.
Did I say?
So I think there's in the report there's a table we've produced. Which shows that's in paragraph 54. So that shows both the amount, the proportion of our funding that has gone to those events, plus the number of events. So historically there's generally been about, say, was it between 7 and 9 events annually. Pre-COVID, you'd see on that table that there's been 3 events in the first round, and the majority
So
have come
that's the
through.
Wakaama and the Polyfest?
Yeah, those are the 2.
There's another one, those 2, and then the other list of that, sorry, the other list is the ones that have declined. None of those that I've had a look at are Māori applicants.
Yeah.
They're the ones that have been declined, the ones that I don't think is Māori.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So historically, we've had a larger number come through in the second round,
yeah,
and
focused on.
And they'll all get funded?
yeah, I think there haven't been. I'm trying to think of Māori events that have been declined. Certainly it's an area that we're keen to get more applicants. One area of focus there would be Matariki events now. We're keen to get some coming through there to add to that occasion.
So who decides?
Besides, it's really, we were largely responding to applications.
Yeah, who decides yes or no?
So we have the applications go through an assessment, and this round we had, there's 3 staff that assessed it against the priorities and give that scoring, and then we consider them against those other, the fit with the portfolio, make sure they are regional and not a local board event. And as I say, I think there hasn't, apart from, I think there might have been some small activities that weren't events that were normally in scope for our regional funding that were Māori-led, but I think all the other events of regional scale, I think we've supported. So it's definitely an area we're keen to ensure that we maintain that level of, historically it's been, I think we're funding about around 20% of this. The value of the round has gone to events with a Māori focus, led by Māori.
Thanks, David. Last question, Councillor Filipino.
Thank you, Chair, and tēnā kōrua to you both. If you have a look at chart 1 on page 44 of Nexus on our report, that chart there has the local board spread plus regional. I just wanted to get some clarification and say that when I looked at it, it had Central had round 1, 11 events and 12, but that just indicates where the applicant is holding the event. I just wanted to get that clarified. It's, it's not, that's why they're there, for example, and Member Henare mentioned, I think you mentioned to Member Henare, for example, the Waiheke International Jazz, for example, that's been held over there, but it's in the local board area. So it's, that's the reason why the numbers A. It's not because South Auckland local boards are missing out, because they're all regional events. That's the clarification.
Yeah, I think it's really the nature of the larger events are more likely to cluster around the centre of the region to give equal access to their audiences or attendees.
And the last part I've here, Mana Chair, is the 196. So that's the next round, round 2, and that's going to be focused on, I think, Māori, focused on youth. Can you just clarify that second round, the funding, where the target is?
We had in the past sort of identified it as a round focused in that way, and the assessment criteria was actually adjusted to give added weight. We tended, sort of during the COVID period and subsequently, is to retain that actual weighting, and you see in the it notes there that the 9 sort of elements of their scoring. At the bottom of there's the focus on Māori and youth events. So that's coming through every time now, but we just haven't identified the rounds as having that priority.
Yeah, that's the grant assessment criteria that you're referring to with those 9. Kia ora, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before we move to comments, can I just check the room and see how you would feel about removing the NZSO 25,000?
Chair, sorry. Look, this is from my perspective, I think, and again, we always go back to process. And I mean, although what the Deputy Mayor is saying in the light of it, I'm assuming that would have been done in regards to the criteria. And that's the only reason why it was a wee bit different with the regional sports around that process. And the reason I say that is because I read the application, the full application in regards to what I supported and didn't go against, and went against the officer's recommendation, because I read the full application of that particular one in Howick or Pakuranga. So I read the full application. So that's why this here for me, I'm supporting, and that's the only reason from my perspective.
That's all good, all good, thank you. Are there any comments? Comment? Councillor, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Madam Chair. I had one more question for the staff after hearing Councillor Filipino's kōrero. Is that okay if I ask? Yeah, just a question on the NZ New Zealand Symphony Orchestra application, because I'm quite keen to fund it if possible. Putting aside the fact that we've also got the APO and putting that as a competitor aside, did they meet the criteria, all of the criteria for the funding? And is that why, are you able to speak to that recommendation?
Yes, they do. The event does meet the criteria, And I think in terms of the particular elements there are probably the scale of the event and the, I guess, the celebration of Pacifica music in that context. It's sort of it's something quite different. Those were sort of the key things there, and also that there was that act of addressing that access to the Pacifica communities. They were doing a lot to achieve that.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We're on to comments. Oh, question, yep.
So I'm just trying to find the criteria, I haven't managed to find them yet, but would I be correct in saying that the issue that Councillor Simpson, the Deputy Mayor, has raised around priority around events that are Auckland-based rather than national-based, and the opportunity for an organisation to get other funding, and that might be funding from government or the like, would that sort of thing rate as a criteria, or does it follow that we need to widen our criteria?
Yeah, I suppose it's part of it comes back to this the aspect of with funding activities like this is that they seek generally sourcing funds from a range of grant providers or sponsors, and often the scale of the activity and the what you get out of it will depend on the level of funding that you receive, and so I think that's where we take into account what other funding is there, but in some examples like this, it is a case of being able to provide some support to the event, which is likely to lead to that more favourable ticket prices and their the work that they do to deliver that event to those communities. So it's sort of I don't.
Thank you. Right, we're on to, is that a question or, oh, yeah.
So is it fair to say that the NZSO one is actually more about access for a part of the Auckland community to something that they're offering, as opposed to funding what might be perceived as a competitor? So it's actually about part of Auckland's community being able to access their offering. Is that fair? Well, you can ask that if you want, but that's my question.
Yeah, I think that is a big component of it. It's that because we don't see it's the orchestra isn't making a profit out of the activity. It's I guess we're providing support for an orchestra that's not based in Auckland, but it's, as I said before, I guess our primary focus was on the relatively unique nature of the event, and and also that there had been I guess, request from Pacifica communities for it to be held in Auckland.
So they're not coming anyway?
So
this is specifically... Sorry.
Before anyone else speaks, I need to move an extension of time until the end of the agenda. Second by Councillor Henderson. Thank you. Right. Councillor Ferry, did you get your question answered? No more questions?
Just one thing I often, you'll hear me say at the end of every grants decision, is just to make sure that the Auckland Council is acknowledged as a funder on all the collateral that goes out. I just repeatedly see the absence of that. I'm not saying in your area, but it's just too regular, Chair, that we don't, I know that our public money is invested, but I don't see the acknowledgement of it. And so that's just in all the collateral and promoting, be it website, print, ticketing, I think we should be reminding Aucklanders that their money is actually invested in the event. So if we can have eyes on that, please. Thank you.
I think we're in comments. Comment?
Just
Councillor
a bit, oh,
Simpson's
sorry,
first. Just
I
wanted to
can
check
close
if
the
it's-
debate because I know that the Deputy Mayor wants to comment.
Just briefly, I appreciate process. I think that's really important. I suppose for me, you know, the NZSO was funded to nationally tour. They are funded to come to Auckland by somebody else. And if we wanted a generous ticket price for something that they were going to provide in our city, I think we should have requested that from them as part of their national planning. I think they do an outstanding job, and I think the fact that your community can have, the South Auckland community can have a cheaper access to a wonderful orchestra is fantastic. It's just in my heart that the APO, I know, does a huge outreach to the same community, and it just irks me that we're giving, you know, money to what I would call a competing orchestra when we have a designated orchestra to deliver whatever is required for our city. So I just feel in my heart I need to say that. But both orchestras are outstanding, and I think they both do a great job.
Thank you. And to close, Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. Acknowledge the staff, but there's one thing, please, can you take back to your director? And I think within your staff, and my suggestion is, please have a look at the criteria that we have here, because when I see alignment with Māori priority, alignment with youth priority having an 8, and then I have a look at other consideration as outlined in the policy, that's a 12. I'm just sort of saying we need to have a look at it. If it stays the same way as the discussion, I don't want to bring it to a workshop. I just really want our staff just to have a look at it and whether the weightings are correct. And apart from that, Chair, fully support. Kia ora.
Right, thank you so much. Thank you, David and Angela. And we'll take a vote on this. All in favour? Against? Against the whole lot? Just a no. Okay, thank you. Right.